of you know who it is. Okay. We have with us today Neha Parthi from Quest Alliance. Neha, if you want to put your hand up, that would be great. uh, Neha Parthi has 15 plus years of experience in education programs. She's currently the director for the schools program at Quest Alliance in Bangalore, a non-profit trust that equips young people with 21st century skills. Educator capacity building, learning experience design, and program management are her core skill sets. She has worked extensively on both learner and teacher-facing curriculum for 21st century skill development. A core part of her work has also been on adolescent development with a focus on girls' education, building STEM mindsets and career exploration. As part of the work that she did on developing Career Quest, a digital game to introduce career decision-making to young people, it has been recognized as top 100 innovations by the 100 organization in Finland. Neha, a warm welcome to the webinar today, and we are looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Kritika, for that. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation with everyone else.
Great, Neha. It is my pleasure to now introduce all of you to Mr. Sarit Sharma, co-founder of Avishkar, a Center for Science, Maths, Arts and Technology. Avishkar aims to make teaching of science and maths effective, efficient, and fun. The program aims to encourage hands-on learning through models, experiments, experiences, and projects. Avishkar strives to make quality STEM education accessible to all, irrespective of social or economic background. Sarit himself is a technology enthusiast, a science teacher, a storyteller, and a business idea dreamer. He's an engineering by training with a PhD in electrical engineering, with several publications and patents. He also enjoys working with the neighborhood communities to make joyful experiences for all, with his work on setting up libraries, making bamboo furniture, to name a few. Welcome to the webinar, Sarit. Really happy to have you here. Okay, we have next two authors on our panel today, but let me start by introducing Sayantan Datta. Sayantan Datta is an assistant professor at the Center for Writing and Pedagogy at Kriya University and an independent science journalist and a children's book writer. Their book, The Plant Whisperer, was listed on the Parag Honor List 2023 and was shortlisted by the Green Literature Festival 2023. They've also written a children's book on the life of Dalit and transgender rights activist Grace Banu, titled Grace, published by Pratham Books. Welcome to the webinar, Sayantan. Really happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very excited and honored to be here as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It is again my pleasure to introduce Veena Prasad, who says that she finds great joy in turning concepts into prose. As a child, she would paraphrase textbook content into fun little reads. As a programmer, which was her first job, she says she took more interest in explaining her flow of logic, choice of variables, and design of functions than in writing the actual code. As a mother, she says she's always exploring the mysteries of the world with her son, seeing science in the most elemental way through the eyes of a child. Now she's back in tech full circle, writing about the science of data and an intelligence that is artificial, and is the author of many lovely children's books with Pratham Books, such as Creatures of the Old, Monumental Max, Telephone's Bell to Sell, and How Does the Toothpaste Get into the Tube? A warm welcome to you, Veena.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here on this panel with such amazing folks. Thank you.
Up next, we have Sampad Mohapatra, a TV journalist with 2 decades of experiences. He says that storytelling has been his daily bread and butter in some sense. His passion lies in crafting STEM stories, where science and mathematics intertwine seamlessly with enchanting art of storytelling. Having a background in science, he intimately understands the challenges students face in grasping complex concepts. Since 1995, he has been dedicated to children's education, employing various methods to make learning both enjoyable and enriching. From simple science and mathematical activities to arts and crafts projects, origami, and even stargazing sessions, Sampath sir is a pioneer and has explored diverse avenues to make STEM subjects come alive. His visits to different schools allow him to share the joy of storytelling and the wonders of learning with children from all walks of life. Thank you so much for joining us, Sampath sir, and a warm welcome. We have our final speaker, Seema Acharya ma'am, who is a very experienced educator. Seema ma'am, कोटा राजस्थान से जुड़ी है आज एंड उन्होंने अपना गवर्नमेंट टीचर करियर 1994 में सिरोही डिस्ट्रिक्ट ऑफ राजस्थान में शुरू किए थे. She is currently serving as a teacher in the government primary school in Sultanpur, Kota. With 30 years of experience, she primarily teaches primary grade students और सारे सब्जेक्ट सिखाते हैं. Energetic, highly empathetic, and bringing joy and insight into every conversation, सीमा मैम, आपको बहुत स्वागत है आज के वेबिनार के लिए. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm very excited to join this joyful platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seema ma'am. All right. Last but not the least, I want to introduce you all to Purvi Shah, Senior Director of StoryWeaver and Strategy at Pratham Books. Purvi has over 16 years of experience in Pratham Books and is the guiding light behind everything that we do. For opening remarks, I invite Purvi to set the stage bright and shiny like she always does with all meetings and all conversations in our work. Purvi, over to you.
Thank you, Kritika. Now I'll really have to live up to that. But good evening, everyone. First of all, wishing everybody a very happy National Science Day. Thank you for letting us know where you're joining us from, your organizations. I'm so happy to see that we have people from Indore, Hyderabad, JNK, Coimbatore, Lucknow, and Rajkot, which is very close to my hometown. So welcome, everybody. And for those of you who joined us a little later and haven't told us about you, please, we are still looking at the chat very, very closely. So please put in your names, your organizations, and where you're joining in from. As you all know, Pratham Books is a not-for-profit children's book publisher, and StoryWeaver from Pratham Books is a platform where you can find many, many, many stories in 350 languages of the world. But today, we're just going to focus on STEM stories. So I'll start with a story as well. A story called Who's on Divya's Map? Divya is very excited because her cousin is going to come to visit her to Gajapur soon. But she's not sure how she'll find her house. So Divya comes up with a bright idea. She wants to draw a map and send it to her cousin so her cousin can follow the map and come to Divya's house very, very confidently. Now, when this story was done as part of our maps and basic geography topic under EVS, little Gunjan, who's in class 3, heard the story very well, did the activity very well with her teacher, and she was so fascinated that next day she strolls into her classroom carrying what looks like a scroll map. And then she unfolds the map and she shows her teacher a very neatly drawn, detailed map on how to get from the school to her home. Now, what are the skills that that little Gunjan has developed reading Divya's story? A little bit about spatial reasoning, a little bit about observation, a little bit about how to use that observation and bring it into a chart. And it's also instilled all of this with joy and given her the confidence to walk into her class with a scroll map. So while storybooks such as these help develop core skill sets, open mindsets, and also expose children to a very different STEM professions, be it a cartographer, a data scientist, or a marine biologist, we at Pratham Books have therefore published a strong catalog of STEM storybooks because we know that research has shown us that integrating storytelling into STEM education can lead to a 20% increase in student engagement and understanding of complex thoughts. So today, as Kritika has already introduced our brilliant lineup of speakers, we welcome each and every one of you to share your work and also help us tell us how you all are helping foster a STEM mindset through your work. Welcome everyone, and over to you, Kritika.
Thank you so much, Purvi. Really, really happy to have started with Divya and her wonderful map. Uh, on that note, let's begin with our discussions. At first, I want to invite Neha Parthi from Quest Alliance for a discussion on her work with Quest Alliance, her focus on gender and STEM careers, and how Quest Alliance sees STEM skills and mindsets. Neha, would you join me for a discussion?
Gladly, Kritika.
Let me spotlight you for everyone. Okay, great.
Hmm.
Okay. So, Neha, I think a good place to begin from today for our audience and everybody who has joined us is for you to tell us what are STEM skills according to you? What is STEM when it comes to the work that you do at Quest Alliance?
Great. So before I actually get into that, and firstly, thanks, Purvi, for sharing that story also. I think it sets a very nice context of how we should be thinking about STEM mindsets. So I think like for Quest, the journey with STEM kind of started in 2015, which was the first time when we got a request to work on a coding project in one school in Bangalore. And I think like personally for me, I was out of my comfort zone, having been a social work student and have studied like sociology as part of my bachelor's. I was like, how the hell am I going to like, wrap my head around this and think of a design for this? But I think like that's when I started kind of thinking about that how should we be talking about STEM? And the first thing that comes is that we look at it as a, group of subjects: science, technology, engineering, math. But when I actually started reading about it, that, what is the purpose with which STEM needs to be sort of introduced, that's when I realized that it has so much potential as a mindset which can actually help you to become more observant. It can actually help you to have, more empathy and really think about the kind of problems you want to solve and really have the power in your hands to kind of think about solutions. Had someone told me that and made me understand that in 10th standard, maybe I would have taken science in my 11th standard and, thought about all the wonderful things that I can build if I pursue STEM as a stream. So I think like for me, that was a big realization that how does STEM get introduced into schools? How do students kind of, get to engage with it? And therefore, what is the experience and understanding that they go out with? And how do we break that fear that is associated with STEM? And especially when it comes for girls as well, right? Like after they pass out from say 5th grade, that hesitation around science, math starts increasing, and we've seen enough research around that. So that's when at Quest, we were like that we're not going to talk about STEM, but we're going to talk about STEM mindsets. And we did a whole sort of research around how we should be thinking about STEM mindsets. So I'll maybe quickly share my screen and, oh, I can't share my screen. Can someone share screen on my behalf or?
No, I'll just allow you to share screen. I think now you should.
Okay. Are you all able to see?
Yes, Neha.
Great. So this is just an overview of our work, but I think like, yeah. So critical part was to kind of move from STEM to STEM mindsets. I think that's the narrative that we were also looking to build. And based on the research that we did, this is how we define STEM mindsets for ourselves, where it is basically about the ability to ask and answer questions using a scientific approach. Look at a lot of data and evidence around you, like how do you start recognizing patterns that are around you and also question those patterns. And then kind of, identify opportunities and risks to kind of make decisions, take action, to then predict the outcomes as well. And obviously, in today's context, we can't not have a role of technology when we are looking at various aspects of life. So therefore, also kind of seeing that, what is the potential of science, engineering, technology to solve local and global problems. And I think like that's where the equity lens, and I'll talk a little bit about it later as well, was very important. That when we are using STEM is the space where a lot of research, investment is made, a lot of innovation happens in the area of STEM. So whose problems are we actually solving for? Whose voices are we actually listening to when we are talking about making investments? So that's how we kind of spoke about STEM mindsets. And then we said that it's skills and attitudes together. It's not it's not only knowledge and technical knowledge that you have about the subjects. And we did a sort of a very comprehensive research where we spoke to experts, industry experts. We spoke to, people from different kinds of professions as well. So this included people from media. This included like people from the art space, theater space as well. Because the lines between STEM and non-STEM, professions are also blurring in today's context. And these were some of the things that we kind of came up with. And it's interesting to see that when you talk about a STEM mindset, there are things like patience, there is things like, perseverance, hard work, which also become a part of STEM mindset. So, yeah.
That is really interesting, Neha. Thank you so much for sharing. I like how demystified STEM mindsets and skills look on this slide. And I think that is very hopeful. So, Neha, I think that brings me to my next question, which is what do you think is the status of STEM education in India today? What are the perceptions around STEM education, and how are, schools, educators, policies perceiving it?
Right. And I had a very interesting conversation today. I just gone for a school visit in Bad.
Yeah.
And there was one, he was an administrative officer who was like making the school visit, and he was asking us, so what are you doing in STEM? We have set up a STEM lab and there's like robotics and also he said that I want to see like students, it'll be great if they can make a project where something is flying and picking up one thing and putting it in another place. So that was one notion of STEM that he had. And the other example that he gave was, that how he has students who can say tables till like 80 तक का टेबल आता है उन्हें. आपको भी नहीं आता होगा 80 तक का टेबल. I was like, sir, मुझे तो 18 का टेबल भी नहीं आता है. But I think like, so it was just interesting to see that how the notion of STEM is still like, having this, and it's something that can be rote memorized as well. I can, memorize tables up till like 1,000 if I want to. But that doesn't really mean that I have developed a STEM mindset. So I think like that's just representative. And I know there are many teachers in this audience as well. I hope they don't like beat me up after this. But I think like there's a big gap in how we understand STEM. And again, when we did our research, so this is something that we saw. An important aspect of STEM is the ability to kind of be able to take risks, experiment. But there are no surprises here. I think like in terms of gender, if you see like how many times girls versus boys have opened something up to see how it works, or have tried like repairing something, so you see a big gender gap. I think the only place where the gender gap is not there is when it comes to like tinkering in the kitchen, or like working in the garden. But it's interesting that how when you will ask girls that, have they been doing anything like this, they will also not validate their own experiences that they are applying STEM mindsets. It's just that maybe in the value hierarchy, it's not seen to be as valuable as maybe like being able to fix something which is mechanical, or being able to go outside in the market and like, do a financial transaction. So that was an insight that we had, and we use some of this even with our teachers when we work on capacity. But I think like the most interesting one for me was when we asked teachers that what is the purpose of teaching STEM, so teaching science and maths, and we gave them 3-4 options of thinking logically, looking for evidence, factual knowledge, and questioning traditional belief. I was surprised that there are teachers who that questioning traditional belief is the lowest, 0%, 5%, 3%, and even like looking for evidence in one of the states is at 0%. So it's only thinking logically, and that's the connect that they make, that STEM will then help them prepare for competitive exams because there are a lot of reasoning questions that get asked. But all these other aspects, which are so much more important to build a STEM mindset, nobody is really thinking about it or talking about it. And I think like, especially when we look at it from a gender lens, questioning traditional belief means that you are able to challenge gender norms that you are seeing around yourself. The fact that that is scored the lowest also means that our ability to challenge gender norms around it, to create like different possibilities for our learners, is not something that we are preparing them for in our school ecosystem today. So how do we kind of break this is again something that we have kind of worked on as a team. But these were some really interesting insights for us also, that how are people thinking about STEM as well in today's context, and how it then gets reflected in our conversations, and how we work with the students as well, or what career aspirations also we kind of, propose for girls, boys as well.
Got it. That's very interesting, Neha, because from what I'm hearing from you, how this mindset plays into everyday choices is a very powerful, way of thinking about STEM mindsets and the need and the relevance of building them from a young age. So coming to questioning traditional beliefs and challenging status quo, how is Quest Alliance's work, and what are your thoughts on how we can make this more inclusive for women and other genders? Is there what is your work? What has your work told you?
Right. So I think like for us, a big part of the work has been on encouraging more girls to pursue STEM. And right now for us, I think like given as an organization, we are also still building our understanding of gender. So we haven't really opened the gender spectrum for ourselves. We are still operating at binaries in terms of boys and girls. So our focus has been more on seeing how we can encourage girls to pursue STEM. And I think like that's a point of view that at least I also personally feel very strongly about, that whenever we talk about why we need more girls in STEM, it's always from an economic perspective, that that's where the future of the jobs are, that's where the incomes are going to increase. So from an economic empowerment point of view, you need to have more girls in STEM. But I think like for me, it's also a question of equity. And this is from the world sort of population data that is generated every year by the UN body. So in 2023, the theme was actually gender equality for that. And the fact that almost 50% of the world population is women. But if you look at the investment being made in STEM spaces from a gender lens, it's actually very, very low. I actually couldn't find any data from a gender lens in terms of where the investment is being made when it comes to research, innovation, how many gender-based problems are we trying to kind of solve for. And if you read the book Invisible Women, there are ample number of examples of how, the world is not designed for women, right? From urban planning to transportation systems, to even childcare policies at the workplace, to mechanical equipment which construction laborers use, and that was like an eye-opener as well as to why we need to look at STEM from an equity lens, because that's where all your problem solving is happening. And if we look at the Sustainable Development Goals as well, it has called out that STEM education is going to be an important part if we are to solve for global problems. And if we don't apply this equity lens to solving problems, then we might not be solving for everyone. We will only solve for a certain section of the population. So that's where we apply a very strong gender lens to the work that we do in STEM. So if we are thinking about problem solving, what happens when you apply the equity lens? And we've had some really interesting sort of insights and experiences while working with our learners on it as well. So yeah.
That is great. Thank you so much, Neha. I think bringing in the invisibility of problems when we don't have enough representation, that was a very powerful perspective. Neha, I think we would like to go next to the work of your learners, which I think you just mentioned. If we can hear a little bit about the problem solving, the risk taking that they do in their STEM work.
Right. So one of the things that we have kind of done is to introduce this whole ideathon and hackathon process. And how we do it is to kind of make them go through a design thinking process where we ask them to first identify a problem, think of a solution. I mean, go deeper into the problem as well in terms of whose problem, what's the actual challenge there, what are you trying to kind of solve for. Then they think of a solution and they actually build a working prototype of that solution as well. And it's been very interesting that as students, especially girls who go through this problem solving process, I think like how their identity and how they relate to themselves also changes. Most of the girls, when they come in the beginning of the process, are either like scared or anxious. But at the same time, there is a curiosity that, you know, something new is going to happen. There's a lot of hesitation when they have to work with, like, say, a sensor or an Arduino board kind of like, you know, technology that is introduced to them. But as they start working on it, I think their self-doubt also starts going down. And that's been, again, an important reflection for us, that while we can work with them on building STEM mindsets, working on self-esteem and self-belief is an equally important part. For them to say that I'm capable of doing this, and, you know, I can be a problem solver, I can be someone who can build solutions. And I think when we ask them to kind of apply the gender lens, the kind of problems that they then start thinking about, a lot of it emerges from their household things. A lot of students in the first round, you know, build automatic mops because they see their mothers do a lot of that, and that causes a lot of back pain. So how can we automate that process so that, you know, they save time and it's less physically sort of arduous as a job? A solar powered kitchen chimney so that, you know, the smoke can move out quickly. It can reduce the risk of asthma. We had a girl who also made a garlic peeler because she had seen her mom like spent a lot of time peeling garlic, and it leads to the smell in the hands as well. So there was that. We've had girls work on problems of disposing sanitary napkins because that's something that they face in their everyday life. So we had someone think of an matka incinerator because they wanted it to be eco-friendly. And recently we did an advanced hackathon where we introduced them to, you know, like wood cutting, 3D printing, and it was amazing. There were two girls whose fathers were carpenters. And at the end of the workshop, they were like, you know, earlier we never thought that we could also contribute to our dad's sort of profession. But having gone through this experience, I'm very excited to go like talk about new designs and work with my dad to take his business forward as well. So I think just the shift in their confidence of what they think they are capable of doing with an exposure of just 5 days. I think the challenge for us is that how do we keep this an ongoing process, because these then become like one-time events. But that's something that we have seen, and we are hoping that this is something we can kind of, you know, take to more and more places. We have something called the Scratch Toolkit, which is again learning to code, but through stories. Here again, I think our intention is to get students to talk about their own stories and tell their own stories so that they feel, again, confident and validated that, you know, I also have a story to tell. Otherwise, you know, while working on code, if you look at the art of code, it's either about making a game or sort of a predetermined program that you can learn from. But the fact that we tell them to make their own stories, whether it's about their aspirations, whether it's about their role models, I think that also shifts something in them. And we've had a lot of students tell us that I never really thought about myself like that. So this has also given me an opportunity to think about what I like, you know, what I want to be, how can I get there, what am I curious about as well. We have a chat bot as well. I think like this was our attempt, since scale is a big thing these days for the civil society. How do we kind of connect with students at scale? So we are still experimenting with the chat bot, again, to introduce them to the basics of coding. But again, in such a way that they really understand the concepts behind coding and not necessarily the technical part of writing a code, but the fact that it's a way of thinking, and how do you then apply that as a way of thinking in your everyday life. And the last bit has been role model interactions for us. And I think like this is a big one. And I think we kind of underestimated the impact of this initially when we were starting off. But it's very important for both girls and boys to see that there are people who have challenged gender norms and entered into spaces which otherwise you might not think of So we've done a series of role model interactions. And I think the other part is that how do you identify role models who are relatable? So for the state of Bihar, we had this woman who was the first one to go to an ITI and become a locomotive pilot from her district. And it was very interesting that when she was doing the interaction with the kids, the questions were not like technical in terms of ki padhai mein aapne kya kiya, but the questions were really around how did you even convince your parents to let you go out of your village to study? And what was that like? So I think like hearing it from someone who's actually overcome these challenges and navigated them also gives them confidence that I also can do it as long as I have a supportive ecosystem. So how do we provide that supportive ecosystem then kind of becomes our role. And we have a series of sort of videos which we made with interesting people. So she is someone from Nagaland who's an agricultural scientist, and we have a whole video of what a day in her work kind of looks like. And I think this is going to play now, but I'm not going to play it. I will move to the next slide. The last one is a career game. I think like this was a reflection for us that while you're working on STEM, it's equally important to give some clarity on how do you go about your career exploration process. So again, through 8 characters, we have kind of put their career journey together. And what this really does is to give students an experience of career decision making. So they all, like this game basically presents dilemmas that they're going through. That, should I leave my village to go out and study, or should I, take a local diploma where I'm at because of the financial condition in my house? Should I agree to get married, or should I put my foot down that I want to continue my education as a girl? And in this, we've also tried to kind of bring in a lot of diversity in the characters, rural, urban, even from a gender lens, we have a transgender character as well in the game. And it's interesting to see how students engage with different characters whose stories and life experiences might be different from theirs as well. Yeah, and I think over a period of time, we've also started working with educators. So we have a course called Master Coach, which is where we've really consolidated a lot of our learnings of working with teachers and converted that into a blended learning kind of an approach. It's available on our app. Here again, we do a lot of work around building STEM mindsets, building gender inclusive classrooms for our learners. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of the kind of work that we are doing. So it's quite multifaceted in terms of bringing different strategies and technology together. I think one thing which we have not been able to crack is really the parent engagement piece. And we realize that it's an important part because parents and teachers are the sort of 2 big influencers when it comes to career decision making. But that's not something that we've been able to kind of, work at scale. I think in smaller bits and pieces, there's enough experimentation that has happened, but we do recognize that as a challenge and a gap right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Neha. I think I I would echo the audience when I say that the work of the children and what you presented, it was truly inspiring. The kind of problem solving mindset that they showed. So really, really thank you for sharing that. I think we'd like to close your discussion with one question, which I think Naga Veena has also asked us. What is there any work that you do with younger students in the early grades and the early years? And do you see any advantages of starting early? That, and I think, Neha, there was one question on is the risk-taking ability that was shown by women, as in girls in this case, is it linked to the sense of freedom they have and the access they have? So if you want to just take those 2 questions.
Right. So as an organization, we are not working in the early grades because we also realize it's not possible for us to like be present across all age groups. But I think there's definitely merit in starting off early. The sooner you kind of, and I feel like kids have a natural tendency to be curious when they are younger. It's only when they come to schools that, we kind of kill that creativity and curiosity. So it's always good to start early. I think like if we can kind of nurture that curiosity, if we can nurture that ability to ask questions, to kind of tinker, to experiment, it's always easier for us then to kind of build an inclination and aspiration towards STEM. There'll be less fear, there'll be less hesitance to engage with these subjects as well as they grow older. So I think it's really critical in terms of how it gets introduced at an earlier age. And again, the kind of learning experiences we can design, which are fun and engaging, and really kind of also start making them maybe think and observe their context from a critical lens. So yeah, the earlier we start, the better it is.
Great. Thank you so much, Neha. It was absolutely a pleasure to speak with you today and to hear about your work. Wishing you all the best for all your efforts in the future. Thank you so much. Okay, building on from there, we have our next speaker, Sarit Sir from Avishkar Center for Maths and Science Learning. Sarit Sir will specifically touch upon how science and maths education should be cultivating curiosity in children and how Avishkar's innovative approaches cater to that. Over to you, Sarit Sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to start by saying, how much I was appreciating what was just being discussed. We see that everything, we also work, we have a lot of focus on girls' STEM as well. But I have to say that we are per se not exactly STEM. We are more like S&M. I know it sounds sort of erotic, but what we do is science and math. That's what I meant. What is this? Entered waiting room? Am I supposed to do anything? I guess I admit.
No, Sarit Sir, nothing.
Okay.
I just made you a co-host, so in case you want to share screen, but
okay.
you don't
Great.
have to.
No, I'll share something. So I think in our country there isn't much of a distinction between what is science, what is technology, what's engineering. It all seems the same, right? But what we really do is science, and I'm going to start with just trying to figure out what do we think. I'll try to see if I can share my screen. Let's see how that works. So where do I go? I go to share. Okay. And then where do I go? What does it say? Image document. I'm doing it from the phone because we don't have power here.
Okay.
So should I just go to the screen or what does it work?
Sarit sir, do you want to just send it to me? I can share screen from my laptop for you.
Maybe. Let me see. Just hold on. Let me see if this. I keep getting messages about. Oh yeah, I think I can do this. This is okay. Where is it now? Trying to see share screen, but to which screen to share? Google, I guess. Then there'll be a lot of Google screens, as is always the case. Here on top. I'm going to try this again. If not, then I will certainly send the file over to be shared. SharePoint box, photo, image, document. Now share whiteboard. Sorry, I should have tested this, way before. No, this is not what I wanted. idea where is this going. No. I think I'll just send you the file. Just give me a moment here. Let's try one more. Maybe share. Okay. So what I was thinking was to talk about what do we think is science? Our goal here is to simplify most of the things that we possibly can. Okay, recent documents. No, I don't think I'll be able to do this. I'll have to send the file to you. I'm just thinking. I'm sending you the file. Why don't you share it with everybody? Sorry, let me.
Okay, sir.
Start the talk in the meantime, so because time might be an issue with the other speakers also. No, Kritika, let's start the शुरू कर देंगे.
Yeah, you somebody else can continue and I can come back later.
No, sir, you can also start with the conversation, and then while we're also trying to project your presentation.
I'm just trying to see what is your WhatsApp number or Kritika? Do I have that?
Right, sir. Okay, maybe then we will come back to you.
Yep, that's what I meant.
Yuvika can text you in the meanwhile so that you
Sure.
can.
Okay.
Thank you
Go
so
ahead.
much. To all our participants, really sorry about that. We'll be back with Sarit sir real soon. Up next, let's. Yes, sorry, I just had to fix something. Okay. Up next, we are to hear from Veena Prasad and Sayantan Datta, our authors who have written and created multiple STEM storybooks for us at Pratham Books. I'm going to spotlight both of them, and we will be having a discussion together. Welcome, Veena and Sayantan.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Hi. All right. Okay. So Veena, I think I'd like to start with you. And the first question that comes to mind for anybody when we hear that you both write STEM storybooks is, why STEM of all things? Why?
Why STEM? When I started, I didn't think of it as STEM, honestly. I was just thinking of it as a way to bring awe into something that I found interesting. So it was a very personal thing for me. I also have to actually bring in this guy here, Carl Sagan. The book Cosmos was something that actually changed my life. When I was 14, I happened to read this book. The book starts with a poem. He's a scientist, and it's a science for the lay person kind of book. One of the few that came out in the late 80s, I think. And it was a huge difference from how I was used to reading about science in textbooks. He brings in the awe of the universe, the cosmos, how insignificant we are, the immense distances in space, and contrast this to the way we learned about the sun is the center of the solar system. There are 9 planets, blah blah blah. There were 9 back then. Pluto was a planet back then. So anyway, but when I read this book, and every time I looked up at the sky, I saw it in a very different way. I started thinking about our ancestors who made rudimentary telescopes. They'd see a star, probably latch onto that star, observe its movement, latch onto a planet, realize it's a planet, first of all. I mean, that takes a lot of doing, right? And then observe its orbit and document that, and then, convince themselves. It would have taken an entire year, right, to figure out that something like this is happening up in space. And so to me, that invoked awe that was missing in my textbook or in whatever I read. So that was the starting point for me. I wanted to write like Carl Sagan, and I wanted to share my awe with people. I would just tell people as soon as I discovered something that was really interesting to me, that made me excited, I would just catch hold of random people and tell them, which also had the effect of driving people away. So maybe that's why I started writing. So, you will have a choice to either pick up my book or not. But yeah, the whole process of understanding something and writing in a way that preserves its awe, right? So STEM to me is so much more than STEM. It's poetry, it's art, it's philosophy, it's history, everything rolled into one. And that's what I try to bring out through my writing.
Great. Thanks, Veena. What about you, Sayantan?
Thanks, Kritika. Firstly, I completely agree with Veena that I think a lot of us, including myself, who write about STEM, really write about the awe of what we find ourselves very, very motivating and wondrous in STEM. For me, actually, I am a scientist by training. I no longer do active research, but I have a couple of degrees in neuroscience. It was during my PhD at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in the second year, when I was no longer interested in working in the laboratory, and I was taking a certain penchant for writing. And because I was, because I was extremely, extremely in love with the kind of work that I was doing, and I was very motivated by the history of neuroscience and the history of science itself. I think the natural choice for me when I started writing was to write about STEM. So I started out as a journalist. I wrote about science in a very journalistic manner. And a couple of concerns that were very important for me as somebody who had worked in laboratories was to think about who are the people who get to do science. And that took me and continues to take me on an exploration of who are the people who do science, what are their lives like. And I particularly focus on the lives of those that we do not hear about. So particularly women in science, the transgender, gender non-conforming and intersex persons in science, people from marginalized castes, and people with disabilities in the Indian science ecosystem. Those are the stories that I'm very interested in talking about. When I write about science, I ensure that it's not just about the mundane science itself, but also the very exciting people behind that science, who we get to hear from. So for me, writing about science is an opportunity to talk about science, but also to break this image of the scientist who's a madman working alone in a corner. It's also an opportunity for me to talk about how everyday the lives of scientists are, while they are also simultaneously very, very how do I say, eccentric is a way of putting it. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you, Sayantan. As we go further into the discussion, I want to take a moment to introduce the books that Sayantan and Veena have written with us. I'm going to introduce two of the books. They've written many for us, so that in the discussion further, if there are any contextual clues. So this is a book by Sayantan Datta, illustrated by Priya Dali. It is about grace, an engineer's fight to make science education accessible for all. What happens, right? It's what happens when a Dalit transgender woman challenges the status quo, much like what Neha touched upon, traditional belief systems. What happens when you challenge them? What does it mean for an entire community, and what does it mean for science education? And that's what Grace, in essence, is about. So just wanted to introduce Grace to all of you. Coming to Veena Prasad's book, Telephone's Bell to Sell, written by Veena Prasad and illustrated by Nishit Mehta. It's about how Alexander Graham Bell's invention, which was a telephone that was connected by wires, how did it become the cell phone? What is that journey like? How long did it take? Who were the people? What were the different stages? So introducing that in a really engaging way is Telephone's Bell to Sell. And one more title we'll probably be using in the conversation is How Did the Toothpaste Get into the Tube? Which is something we all wonder about as children. And Veena has in fact written about that with us. So yes, just a brief introduction into some of their work as we converse further. So Veena Sayantan, I think the next question that I wanted to ask you is, why should children have children's literature? Why should it have STEM stories? What are the advantages when children learn STEM through stories? Sayantan, if you would like to set us off on that.
Great, thank you so much. I think this is a question that I can start answering by saying that when I was younger, and as somebody who was both scared of but very interested in STEM, what I had access to, and I'm talking about somebody who came from a reasonably lower middle class family in semi-urban India, I think mostly what I had access to was either school teachers and textbooks about STEM. And if you were actually hunting for things that were not textbooks, you had these 101 Reasons Why, or these encyclopedic books that one could rely on. And after a point of time, they became very repetitive. They also became very boring. So I think having access to stories about STEM rather than just a list of facts would have been very interesting for me, because stories have a way of putting things in perspective. What I mean by that is stories give you a narrative. So they tell you what led to what. How is it that people thought about something? What are the challenges that they faced when you're faced with 5 alternative possibilities, or when you are faced with challenges and failures 21 times that my first book with Pratham, Plant Whisperer, actually discusses. What do people do? What are the challenges and frustrations that they face? Who do they speak to? So I think those would have been very important in giving me a clearer picture of STEM. So to answer your question brief, I think the first reason why we should have children's literature on STEM is that there's very little literature, children's literature on STEM. When you think about children's literature, most people are thinking about fairy tales. Most people are thinking about fantasy. And I think that's an image of children's literature that we need to shatter. That children's literature can be about science, also tells us that science doesn't need to be out there. It can be here, and something that's accessible to somebody who's as young as 3 or 4. The second important thing is that children's literature actually gives a very, I want to say, holistic picture of STEM. What I mean by that is that it puts people who do science in a community, in a location, confronts them with a research question, and then demonstrates how people reason their way to answer that question. What are the challenges and confrontations they face? And I think this is something that children should be introduced to at a very early age. If we are talking about science, that science is not a set of facts, but a process that one has to follow. And the fact that it is done by people, and people who are just like you and me, is actually a very encouraging way of introducing people to STEM. I'll stop there and pass it on to Veena. And if I have to add something later, I can do that.
Sayantan, you took the words out of my mouth. It's absolutely what I always think about all the time. A storybook essentially, I think, breaks the structure, the standard structure that children are put into while being taught science. In fact, I also want to go back to what Neha said in one of her slides, that she had this bit of data that where questioning traditional beliefs, right, scored really, really low on the parameters that people were questioned on. And I'd also like to refer Sayantan's book, Grace, here, which on the face of it is about inclusion, of course, but it's also about questioning a traditional norm or belief. And I think that is fundamental to being a scientist, not just societal norms, but everything you read. Science is not just facts, like Sayantan said. And to me, it's always the how, right? It's the how that really needs to be explored. I see a paddy field and I see a bowl of rice. I don't know how that happened, right? It was like a very involved, a very ingenious process that showcases all of human ingenuity and intelligence for that to happen. And so for me, it's the how, and it's also about and that's something that textbooks leave out. It's always the what. In the textbooks, and to a certain extent the why, which are also important. I mean, you need a solid foundation to build ideas upon, but you can't leave out the questioning and therefore moving to something new. There is this book, again, I'm so sorry, I keep doing this. So this is the book I'm reading right now, The Song of the Cell, and there's a bit in this book that is about how this person, and again, to borrow what Sayantan said, eccentric person, not a traditional scientist, but he just happened to make the connection between high mortality in one particular ward in a hospital versus somewhat low mortality in another. And he made the connection with sterilization, right? Or with not reusing a scalpel that you used on one person on another. And this was before the concept of microorganisms actually had entered science. So he questioned the way that really respectable surgeons were operating. He dared to question. And he did it because his curiosity got the better of him. Unfortunately, he landed in a lunatic asylum because he ruffled a lot of feathers. So science stories can be heartbreaking. I mean, they are, after all, human stories. So I think, yes, stories are very, very important to understand how we got to this point.
Thank you, Sayantan and Veena. I think that both of your responses to that question was very, very insightful for me. Yeah, and I really enjoyed listening to both of you. Yeah, I just personally wanted to thank you for that. I think then that brings us to, what is your process of writing these books that explain scientific phenomena or speak about people in science and technology? What is your process? Veena, why don't you start us off?
A lot of research, a lot of reading. So I probably read, and what I put in writing is maybe 1% of that. Because as I write, I need to understand more. For me, the process of writing is actually the beginning. I've discovered that putting something in words or trying to explain it in writing actually deepens your understanding of what you don't know. So that's my process. I first figure out what is it that I don't know. As I read, I get deeper and deeper into that. So a huge amount of reading is what I do to write in a nutshell. That is my process.
Sayantan, you want to?
Yeah, I think, I mean, much like Veena's, I also, of course, writing requires a lot of reading and a lot of research, and I think that's true. I write biographical literature. What that means is that the people behind the STEM story are in some sort the main focus of the story. But I do take a lot of care to ensure that I give enough space to the science and the technology that they work with. So the way for me that it works is I actually start with an interview. So there's a very extensive interview that I do with the person who I'm writing on, and that interview travels a lot of directions. It starts with their childhood, their interests in STEM, how did they land in where they did the work, what is this work, So, you know, it covers a very, very big ground in terms of who they are, where they are from, but also what is that they do and how they do it. And also a lot of it is what are the challenges that they face. How do they continue to do STEM despite the challenges that they face? Because everybody here would agree that doing science, technology, engineering, medicine, and mathematics is also in some sense living with failure, much like writing. I think all of us who write also are very familiar with this feeling of having to do it again and again and again till it works for you. So I begin by this interview, and that interview gives me some sense. I try to work with the way potential people who I'm writing about, how do they narrate their lives. I try to work with that storyline, and I try to integrate the story of who they are with what they do. And if you actually look at my books, that's been a very important thread. I must also say that one, you know, and this also links back to the previous question, that, you know, why children's books about STEM? Because of the very heavy role that illustrations play in making children's literature what it is. I think STEM gets an altogether different dimension. I have had both, I have written one on Grace and the other on Jayashree Subramaniam, and both of these people have told me that the illustrations and the writing have given them new frames to think about their own lives and their work. And I think that's a very, very powerful thing to say about children's literature, that within literature is seen as something that's marginal, and STEM literature that within children's literature is seen as something marginal. So yeah, my process is effectively about bringing together lives and work, and not letting any of that be backgrounded. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I want to share somebody from the chat who said, I want to be a child again. Never knew STEM books can be so endearing, which I think is so special. Thank you for sharing that. Sayantan, I think what you just said brings me to the next question on how important is visual literacy when we are learning about science, maths, engineering. And I think the point on perseverance was also very important, as Neha has also echoed. It is an important part of STEM skilling and the framework at the work we do at Pratham Books as well with the STEM literacy program. And what role do characters play in bringing that perseverance, that resilience out? So yeah, visual literacy and characters and how they inspire perseverance in children.
Okay, so I think one thing, if you actually look at how a lot of STEM is taught, at least at the school level, I think diagrams play a substantial role. But there is something very interesting about diagrams, which is that diagrams are very abstracted. So if you actually go to a lab and you take a conical flask, you actually don't see that as a cylinder over a triangle. A conical flask looks like a conical flask. So what I'm saying is that diagrams are not true representations. They are abstracted representations. They lack detail, but they get to some point across. I think something that children's literature is able to do is it's able to actually come up with a truer representation of what STEM looks like. So, for instance, if one looks at the Plant Whisperer, there's a page where Jayashree Subramaniam, the scientist who this book is on, is actually sowing seeds, sowing these mustard seeds, which is the plant that she worked with, and and you know, we have some image of sowing, but actually if you read the book, you realize that because mustard seeds are so small, you need to use a paper clip to sow it. And I don't think ever a science textbook will be able to give this detail with that amount of surprise like children's literature can. So I think that component of visuals is a very specific feature of children's literature that I cannot underline the importance of. The second important thing, and I want to say that yeah, we all understand that science is about reality, hard facts, etc. But children's literature has a very interesting thing that it can do, which is it can introduce some element of fantasy into through its visuals into stories of STEM, and I think that's a very nice wonder that you're able to build through that element of fantasy. So again, going back to science fiction, Plant Whisperer, you will see that the text says that the subject Jayashree Subramaniam is actually being told. I mean, so she worked in France, so she's being told that Indians cannot do science. She's being told that women cannot do science, and her response is stop bugging me. And what the illustrator did is the illustrator actually drew two bugs who are whispering these things, so that you can also have a very nice play on the word bug. So I really like that that you can bring in this drama and this element of fantasy using visuals. And I also think that that visuals that we see in children's books, at least the STEM books that I've encountered, are far more true. Even though they are everyday, they're far more true than the diagrams that we see in textbooks. If it answers your question, I'm sure Veena will have a lot more to add. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the very first thing that visuals do is to attract children to actually open the book and start reading. So it starts from there. And then, of course, they give life to our imagination, the author's imagination. So I am indebted to my illustrators. All of the books, especially the ones that have been brought out by Pratham. Oh my God, the illustrators are just brilliant. And it happens, I don't know, so organically. We don't do back and forth. I don't actually describe in detail to them what is in my mind, which is probably a good thing, because the creativity is entirely their own. And for me, as a writer, it's the first representation of how my story has sort of emerged in the mind of another. And it's good that it's a creative person, so they put it on paper and they show me, and I actually get a different perspective of my own story. That is just really amazing. And characterization, that the visuals, let us explore, especially if you're writing about something that happened a really long time ago that doesn't have enough documentation. You can build a story around it. You can make your characters do whatever you want, just to illustrate the whole process of there's observation and then there's inference, and so much happens in between. And what better way than to have characters act that out, that whole process. So that is something that visuals do. And yeah, also, these fun, the humanizing part of it, when you can bring humor into a story. For example, the toothpaste story, they had this character, and Rajiv, I pay, if you're listening to this, take a bow. I still get DMs from kids who've read this, and they say, I love the illustrations. So they were absolutely brilliant in terms of humanizing the scientist, because it is actually history that I'm trying to bring out in the story. But there are characters who obviously didn't exist that I made up to help the story along, and that was a big hit.
Yeah. Thank you so
Veena,
much.
if I may, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
Kritika, I'm cutting you off, but The Toothpaste is one of my favorite children's books. Before I was
Thank you.
writing The Plant Whisperer, and like I told before the webinar started, that I had a moment of anxiety when I was given this assignment that I have to write a children's book. I'd never written one before. I think Toothpaste was one of the books that helped me a lot in terms
Wow.
of figuring out some of my own work. So I really like it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. This means a lot. This means a lot when people tell me how my work has impacted it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Santh and Veena. Just in the interest of time, the last question, I would like a 30-second response on what is your vision for how children learn science maths in the future? Veena, you want to start
Okay,
us off?
go first. Sorry. Yeah, so my vision is to break down these artificial boundaries we've made, physics, chemistry, maths, history, whatever it is. Just break it down, because I mean, everything is connected, and to be able to join the dots, to be able to see a larger picture of how the world works, is science. That really is my vision. Stop saying, these stop making these narrow. If I may, I don't know if time permits, but I really want to say this. There is this meme that I keep seeing, where this kid is saying, I don't know how to do my taxes, but I know a plus b the whole squared is equal to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And yeah, I don't get the point of this meme, because the point of schooling is not to teach you how to do your taxes in one country with one law. The point is to give you a foundation that empowers you to do your taxes in any country, to do your taxes if the whole tax system changes, to do your taxes if the whole economy, if our notion of money, if our notion of how governance works, if everything changes, you are still empowered. Maybe you are empowered to bring that change. That is my vision for science.
Thank you, Veena.
I'm going to quickly add on. Actually, it's very related to what Veena said. I just want to say that when we talk about science, the way I think, and I hope really that some of our books are also making this dent, the kind of work that Pratham and StoryWeaver are doing is making this dent, is that we are no longer looking at science as just a method, but we are, or just a collection of facts. I'm hoping that we learn to see science as something that's done by people. And when we think about these people, we also think about people we've not thought about yet. So we think about more women, we think about more trans intersex folks, we think about people from marginalized caste backgrounds. So the next time that I come and to speak with children and I ask them who's your favorite scientist, they don't have to say Albert Einstein. I think we've moved past the time when Albert Einstein was the only person who you could think of as a scientist. So I'm hoping that learning that we are making that dent. I'm confident of it. Given that we are speaking to so many school teachers today, I hope you also take this to your students. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Kritika and Team StoryWeaver. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. It's so brilliant speaking with you, Sant, and pleasure.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, both of you. Hey, I know that we have spilt a bit over time. I request all participants to kindly stay with us as we have a few more exciting talks lined up for you. Really sorry about the time. Now we have Sarit sir. Sarit sir, are you here? I can't see you. Yes.
You can.
Yes, now I can. Hello, Sarit sir. I will just share your screen. So Sarit sir from Avishkar Center for Max and Science Learning is going to speak to us next.
I am enjoying listening to so many different opinions and so much passion. So I'm just wondering, what is it that you want me to talk about? Actually, all that needs to be said has been said.
Sarit sir, we have some time where we can hear about Avishkar's work, perhaps.
Sure.
Yes, I will just.
So if you can share my presentation, I would be happy.
I do have it. I'm just going to share it.
Yeah. So as I was actually mentioning when I started off that, we actually work on science and mathematics, right? We don't work much on engineering and technology. Sometimes a little bit as an application of what we do, but mostly we stick to what is science and technology. So I thought I will just take a moment to share my view on what exactly is science. And how it is different even from engineering and technology, right? Okay. People can do engineering and technology without science also. They invented the wheel. They used fire for cooking. That's all technology and science and engineering. And nobody knew science. So a lot of engineering and technology can happen without science. But it won't go that far. you won't be able to make something like the cell phone in your pocket through trial and error. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Right? So science is going to be a big tool in helping you solve problems that you have in your life as an individual, as a society. So then we will call it engineering. When you start solving problems that humans want to solve, we'll call it engineering. And the product that comes out of that problem solving will be called technology. But then what is science? So if I was to put this question, and most of our work is in Hindi. So if I, sort of switch over, and I usually forget when I have switched over and when I continue in which language, right? So just point it out to me. So my question here is, what is science, right? Yeah. So just move to the next one. So a lot of people have different ideas of what is science, and they'll, and that's perfectly okay. That's fine, right? So I'm just going to put what are our thoughts on it, right? Yeah, please go ahead. So I'm going to see. So we have heard these terms. Yeah, go ahead. Social science, political science, physical science, life science. Now think about it again, one more time. So what is science? Now that I've thrown these words at you, which is like, political science and social science, and then what is science? So we have made this definition for ourselves, and this is not just ourselves. I mean, this is what a lot of people will agree with. At least some people will agree with, right? So we are trying to understand the world around us. They're trying to understand the world around us is science. And in that trying, there will be many things. There are some things which other people before us have tried and figured things out, and we will get to read their things and hear from them, or see their videos, YouTube or whatever, and get to know them. And then there will be things that nobody has discovered, nobody has understood, and we will try to. Right? So in our world, what has happened is, when we use the words just science, usually what we are saying is physical science. But it will be nice if we said that, because social science is also a science, and political science is also science, right? So when we say we are trying to understand the world around us, we make boundaries about which world are we trying to understand. If it is the world of politics, then it becomes political science. If it is the world of society, then it becomes social science, and so on. So we can define which world we are trying to understand, right? So trying to understand the world around us is science to us. So when we want to know and we try to understand, what do? We ask questions. So that is our tool to know the world and to understand the world around us, right? But there are two things there: to know and to understand. What does know do? What does knowledge do? It answers these questions: what is happening? Yeah. Where is happening? When? Who? Sort of like how. How is it a little complicated business? How can be phrased in many ways? Sometimes it becomes a little different than just a simple how, right? So these are the questions we answer when we talk about knowledge. And these, yeah, please go ahead. And when we say we are trying to understand, we are trying to answer the question why. Why does something happen? Right? Yeah, you just keep moving. Yeah. You see? So what we are trying to do when we are trying to figure out the world around us, we are trying to get from questions to answers. But there are many ways to get from questions to answer. Many, many, many ways. Human beings are amazing, and we have a lot of variety, right? So if you want to move on to the next one, yeah. But when going from questions to answers, if we use justification, then we say it is science. You don't always have to use justification, and it's okay. You don't always have to do this. And I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. No. But if you do this, then it is science. Right? But what does even justification mean? We'll try to sort of elaborate, break that also down. What do you mean by saying justification? What kind of justification do you want? Right? Yeah. If we keep moving ahead, yeah. So what does it mean? So it means necessarily we should have evidence or logic or data or all three of them or any two of them. Yeah. Any of this, if I use these methods of evidence, logic, and data to go from questions to answers, then I say I'm doing science. So I want to make it very clear to myself, at least, that how is science different from anything else? This is where it is different. And there are many other ways to go from questions to answers. And there are many beautiful ways, many enjoyable ways to do that as well, right? Yeah. So please go ahead. Yeah. So again, just repeating, science to me or us is trying to understand. And around us, what happens? In our world, there are things which are very, very small and some things which are very, very large, right? So we wonder, where do you start? Where do you start, right? So yes, this is just a chart of orders of magnitude of, where person is at the zero, and then there are things sort of like us, or in that same range, in a few meters range, or 10 meters to 0 to 10 meters, not zero, I would say, a millimeter to a 10 meter kind of thing. And then there are things much larger than that, as you can see in this picture. There's the earth, there's the sun, and there are the much bigger stars, and then there are things than us. There are the insects and bugs and and so-called particles and so on, right? So we are going to figure out all of this, right? So where do you start? Oh, you can skip this video if you want. Yeah, this just goes on to show. Or if you want, you can do that. You can run it. Actually, it's a fun video though. Let's do that. Sorry, you see if you can go back and run the video. I don't know if you can.
I don't think I can, sir.
Okay, forget it. Just forget. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead to the next one. Yeah. So when we do science, this is our usual method. Yeah, just go ahead. Just numbers. I'm throwing numbers. Yeah. So again, science is understanding very small things to very large things, and we are in the middle, right? So just wondering, where should we start? Go ahead. Yeah. And most of the time, I'd like to tell you that we don't think about those very small things or those very large things. Our life does not, in everyday life, does not deal with them. Our life deals with things around us, which are sort of within the range of a millimeter to 10 meter kind of a deal with us, right? So where should we start teaching science? I think we should start where we are. We should start with where I am sitting right now, is to start. And from there, I will take you wherever I want. I'll take you to wherever I want, right? So I'm just going to give you a small flavor of how things work. What do you mean by start dealing with things around us? So I'm looking at example of, I'm asking, I ask a question. Okay, just list me the things that you see around you. Just list me at random, right? So I'll just put a random list here. Because in such a large group, it is very difficult to have interaction. I can't take feedback right now. So, okay, here are my list of the things, right? So these are called things. Okay, next, please. Then what else is my life surrounded with? Oh, I see somebody laughing. I see something melting. I hear somebody. I see somebody sleeping. I see somebody quarreling. Oh, these are not things, but this is what my life is surrounded by. So one part is things, and then there are non-things. Things and non-things, right? Yeah, move on. So already I've started to classify. Just from where I'm sitting, I've started to classify these things, right? There's another way of referring to those non-things, and they are called events. So that means my world is surrounded by things and events. Things just are. They just exist. And events happen. है ना? चीजें होती हैं और घटनाएं चीजें तो हैं और घटनाएं होती, right? Okay, what about things? They take up space. Things, I'm just properties. And what about events? They take up time. They take up time. So our world is surrounded with what? Things and events. So move on. So where do we live? We live in space and time. This is a very general way of saying what is measurable, right? So things take up space and events take up time. Yeah. I love repeating things. Yeah, go ahead. So we live in space-time, right? And what are events? Events are change in things. So they are sort of related to each other. So one, I've already started talking about things around me. I've started doing science from where I am sitting. I don't need a lab. Life is my lab, right? So these are all the events, yeah. So we live in space-time. And what does that mean? This is what it means. This is really what it means, right? Yeah, go ahead. So these are the events and changes happening in my world. And we are thinking, so we are talking about things and changes to things. Those are the two fundamental things that we are going to explore in our world. No matter which science you do, actually, no matter which science you do, you will end up doing these things. But this is physical science. I'm referring to the physical science. Maybe there are better ways of doing, social science and political science. Maybe there may be some differences. Yeah. So yeah, we can end this here, and I'm just going to ask you a small question here. You said the teapot, my cell phone, my glasses, my clothes. When I say breaking, means can they be split? Can they be split into two or more parts? Right. So my guess is going. My immediate answer would be, looks like I can break things up. Right. When I break things up, what happens? What happens to things when I break them up? Oh, they break into parts. What is the property of parts? Well, they are smaller than the original object. So what am I doing? I am breaking things into parts. What about those parts? Do you think those parts can be broken down further?
Yes.
Why not? And I'm not saying how. I can use a hammer, I can use a scissors, I can use whatever. I'm not restricting you. This is more imagination, right? Can we break things? And it's fun to actually let kids loose in your classroom and tell them, go take hammer, do whatever, break things. And ask them to do it, go outside. Otherwise, you'll have broken furniture. You don't want that. You ask them to go outside in the nature and say, break things. And find out anything that you can't break. If you can't, can you figure out how to break it? Let's say there's a big rock. Do you think you really can't break it? Oh, you probably could. I'll have to probably get an excavator maybe and hit it very hard with a very big hammer. But I possibly could. So everything can be broken into parts and pieces. And those parts and pieces can be further broken down. And those parts and pieces, oh, they can be further broken down. Oh, so what does this tell me about things? So one thing I can tell you is that things can be broken down. Is there anything you can imagine that cannot be broken down? Forget about now around. Till now, I was restricting you to things around us. Now I'm suddenly letting you loose with your imagination. Think about anything. That atom, what is that? I don't speak Japanese. I'm sorry. I don't speak Japanese. You have to talk in everyday language to me. I am a scientist. I'm not a literature guy. Okay, so don't use words which I don't understand. Molecules, atoms. What's all this? What is this Japanese doing here? No Japanese, please. Speak in everyday terms, so that my first grader can understand, my second grader can understand, my truck driver can understand, my auto rickshaw driver can understand. I don't want anybody speaking in any other language. Okay, we are doing science here. We are not learning Japanese, no? Why should I start speaking Japanese of the session when the session is right? No, you can't do that. No. So I'm going to say that even in my imagination, I can break everything. In my imagination, if I had a big enough hammer, maybe I can break the earth also. But it's in my imagination. It's not unbreakable. I can dig earth. I can break rocks, and rocks and things are what it is made of. So why not? They're breakable. So that means everything is breakable. So everything can be broken into small particles, and those particles can be further broken down, and those particles can be further broken down. Oh, this is fantastic. Awesome. I've discovered an interesting property of the things around me. These are not events. I'm talking about things. So this is one way of looking at it. Now I'm going to change your lens. All of a sudden, start looking from another lens. Things are made up of particles. Just, I'm switching the words of the language, semantics here, but it's going to change everything for you. So far, things can be broken down into pieces. Now I'll start looking from the other end. Oh, so things must be made up of particles. So that means in the whole universe, everything is made up of particles. Wow, awesome, fantastic. Right? I've discovered something which I didn't think I knew. Right? This is just, and I started talking with things just around me. Right? And this has a very good name. People who like Japanese, this is known as the particle theory of matter, or the kinetic theory of matter, or the molecular theory of matter, and you can call it whatever you want. And I don't care. You can call it something in Japanese, and you can use any other language, Chinese as well, if you want. It doesn't matter what you call it. But what matters is that we can start to discuss things from around us. And through my stories, I think of this as storytelling. I don't know. I will take you where I want to. I will take you where I want. Okay. Yep. I think I'm done. And we are out of time anyways. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I wanted to share some things that are coming up in the chat with you while you were speaking.
Yep, I certainly can.
I think
Also, Kritika, I'm in with the time check here. There are two more speakers waiting.
You get live response. So beginning, so what I think, जब किताब जब लिखते हैं तो मैं बाइलिंगुअल कर सकता हूं तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. हेलो.
Yes, sir, bilingual कर सकते हैं आप. जी sir.
तो हाँ, so मेरी कहना है कि जो एक्चुअली जो ऑथर्स है वो एक्चुअली किताब तो लिखते हैं, लेकिन मेरे जो एक्सपीरियंसेस है, मैं तो खुद लिखता नहीं हूँ, लेकिन मैं किताबें स्टोरी उठा के बच्चों को बोलता हूँ, स्टेम स्टोरीज जो होते हैं. तो माय रोल इज लाइक एक्चुअली visualizing the whole story. So if the books are script, then storytelling is like screenplay, because we have to directly put into the children and get the response directly. So for that, we have to be prepared much more before and keep ready everything. So this story, what I get experience was sharing this story of the Pratham Books, the time traveling river. I have a very good experience while sharing this story with children, because this story connects multiple concepts in one story, this time traveling river connects multiple concepts in one story. But it has scope to incorporate history, geography, math, science, mythology, language, and even politics, the water dispute things. So it's a very good salad of storytelling, because always storytelling क्या होता है कि इसमें बहुत ज्यादा salad होता है तो फिर अच्छा लगता है, क्योंकि एक folk stories एक तरह की हो सकते हैं, लेकिन स्टेम स्टोरीज की ये अच्छी बात है कि आप कहीं तरह किसी डायरेक्शन में भी खींच सकते हैं, एक सेंटेंस को खींच सकते हैं कई डायरेक्शंस में। तो और क्या हो सकता है इस स्टोरी में क्या है, इट ओपन्स डोर्स टू मोर स्टोरीज। एक्चुअली इसमें जो लाइन्स है हर पैराग्राफ में मैंने देखा है और एक्सपीरियंस भी किया हूं, मैं शेयर करूंगा 1-2 मिनट में। मैं सिर्फ बोल देता हूं कि इसमें बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो प्रथम बुक्स के स्टोरीज में जब लेता हूं तो उसमें हर स्टेंजेस में हर पैराग्राफ एक स्टोरी हो सकता है, मतलब उस पर भी एक स्टोरी किया जा सकता है इस तरह। तो ये क्या होता है कि क्लासरूम में जब स्टोरी टेलिंग करते हैं तो क्या होता है, मैंने कई बार देखे पेरेंट्स को या फिर स्कूल में भी टीचर्स भी बोलते हैं कि स्टोरी तो ठीक है लेकिन पढ़ाई करो, मतलब पढ़ाई और स्टोरी के बीच में जोड़ने, स्टोरी टाइम होता है, पढ़ाई टाइम होता है। लेकिन ये जो सब प्रथम बुक्स की स्टोरीज है उसमें 2 काम एक साथ हो सकता है, क्योंकि मैंने एक्सपेरिमेंट किया हूँ। तो फिर उसमें बच्चों को आप कुछ चीजें कह सकते हैं, उनको एंगेज कर सकते हैं उनको, और फिर साइंस कंसेप्ट दे सकते हैं। तो जो मैंने जो स्टोरी लिया था, और ये जो स्टोरीज है, द होल स्टोरी कैन बी शॉर्टन और एक्सटेंडेड फॉर डिफरेंट एज ग्रुप, ये बड़ी अच्छी चीज है इसमें। और जो बट द स्टोरी का जो सबसे अहम चीज होती है स्टोरी टेलर्स के लिए, सबसे अहम चीज है, हम जब स्टोरी टेलिंग करते हैं तो सबसे बड़ी चीज है तो सिर्फ स्टोरी पढ़ना काफी नहीं, दैट्स नॉट एनफ, यू हैव टू रीड मच मोर देन एनीथिंग that is written in the story. But likewise, if you're telling the story of a river, you have to know everything about the river. So you could relate it to mythology, to politics, to water dispute, to language studies in much more larger scale. So, but the beginning is important. Because and not only beginning, so beginning is important, and to end the story with a logical end is also required to that the audience can return with an open mind from the session. That's also more important, because जब बच्चे किताब पढ़ते हैं वो ओपन माइंड, मतलब समझे कि नहीं समझे उस पर तो दिखा नहीं जा सकता, लेकिन इसमें डायरेक्टली सेशन एंड हो जाए तो फिर बच्चों को कुछ ऐसे वाव मूवमेंट हो सकते हैं, या फिर कुछ ऐसे मतलब उनके दिमाग में क्वेश्चन घूमता रहना चाहिए ताकि वो स्टोरी टेलिंग अच्छी लगे। तो इस किताब में वो भी है, बहुत सारी कुछ चीजें हैं देखा हूँ। और and keeping the rationale of the science and math, adding fun to it accordingly is the hardest task actually, because science को ऐसा एक्सपेरिमेंट करके दिखा देना और एक स्टोरी कह देना ये अलग चीज है, लेकिन स्टोरी में वो एक्सपेरिमेंट करके स्टोरी को जाना तो वो बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट सी चीज है। मैंने इसमें एक्सपेरिमेंट किया हुआ हूँ, मैं बोलता हूँ कि फिर एक्चुअली वो तो फोटोग्राफ्स अगर होगा तो नहीं चलेगा भी, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं। So before storytelling, the storyteller must plan the whole process of storytelling, how to attract, where to begin, and how to engage children. That is much important. So तो इसमें जो स्टोरी है, मैंने जब एक्सपेरिमेंट किया तो पूरे पढ़ने के बाद मुझे लगा कि इस स्टोरी को 3 तरह से बिगिनिंग किया जा सकता है। हालांकि मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि जो कोई भी स्टोरी हो, जैसे मैंने आज सुबह पढ़ा टूथपेस्ट वाला स्टोरी बिना मैम का, बहुत अच्छा लगा, मैंने उसको भी कभी इस्तेमाल करूंगा, बहुत बढ़िया स्टोरी है। जो ये रिवर वाला स्टोरी में देखा है कि ये 3 तरह की शुरुआत किया जा सकता है। तो ये स्टार्टेड द मोस्ट एंगेजिंग थिंग, जो उसमें कि कहाँ से पॉइंट, क्योंकि स्टोरी टेल में चीजें तो चाहिए, तो इसलिए सब जोड़ना पड़ता है। जैसे तो फिर उसमें मैंने क्या किया, तो फिर so I started the story with an activity. I invite children to watch a little amount of sand under a magnifying glass. That's not in the book, but I added to it. They saw the sand and fine gravels of different color, size, and some sparkling materials. तो बच्चों ने देखा कि कई तरह की तो ये रहता है। मैंने कुछ लिए थे, मैग्नीफाइंग ग्लासेस लिए थे, और फिर कुछ वहां से ही, जैसे सर ने भी बोला कि जो आसपास से ही विज्ञान हो जाना चाहिए वहीं मौजूद होता है, तो वहीं से ही मैंने स्टैंड उठाया, फिर रखा, फिर बच्चों को मैंने लिया था 5-6 मैग्नीफाइंग ग्लासेस लिया था, फिर बच्चों को दिया, बच्चों ने देखे, फिर वहीं से शुरुआत हुआ स्टोरी का। तो फिर ये क्या है, जो रेत है, जो सैंड है, उसमें इतने कई तरह के जो कलरफुल स्टोन्स या रॉक्स दिखाई देते हैं जैसे, तो आए कहाँ से? तो फिर वहां से शुरुआत है, तो कौन लाया? तो फिर इंटरैक्टिव सेशन शुरू हुआ, तो बच्चे ने बोले कि तो कौन लाया? तो नदियां लाए। तो फिर वहां से आया, तो नदियां कैसे होते? तो फिर हमने पहले फिर वहां से शुरुआत की, तो नदियां कैसे होते, नदियां क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं, जैसे हमने किताब में है सिविलाइजेशन के साथ जुड़े, तो हमने जैसे वो किताब में हड़प्पन सिविलाइजेशन, इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन के बारे में है, मैंने तो उसको बोला, लेकिन एक्चुअली स्टोरी टेलिंग में क्या होता है, लोकलाइज कर देने से अच्छा हो जाता है, तो फिर बच्चों को पता होता है अच्छी ये हमने देखा है। तो यहाँ से जो वॉर ऑफ कलिंगा, अशोका की कलिंगा वॉर है, सबने पढ़े होंगे, तो यहीं भुवनेश्वर के पास में एक नदी है, दया नदी करके, तो बच्चों को मैंने जब वहां से रिलेट किया, मतलब स्टोरी में से मैं निकल कर फिर हिस्ट्री की तरफ चले, तो फिर कुछ देर तक वो इंटरेक्शन चला कि फिर वो दया नदी कहाँ पे है, दिखे है, तो फिर इतना छोटा कैसे है, तब जब बोले कि वहां जो ब्लड सेड हुआ था, लाल हो गया था नदियां, तो बच्चे ने पूछे कि लाल हो गया था, अब तक लाल तो नहीं है, तो ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सा हुए। तो फिर उन्होंने जैसे पोल्यूशन के बारे में, जैसे जब स्टोरी आई, जिस हम पोल्यूट कैसे करते हैं, तो मैंने उनको पूछा, एक वही जो जहाँ स्कूल था वहीं से सिर्फ 200 मीटर के दूर में एक नदी है, तो मैंने बच्चों को पूछा, आपने वो जो नदियां देखे हैं? तो बोले कि नदी कहाँ पे है? नहीं वो देखा नहीं है ना, वो तो नाला है। तो बच्चों को पता नहीं, वो नदियां 50 साल के अंदर नाला ही हो गया है, मतलब जब से भुवनेश्वर बना है, वो भुवनेश्वर बनने से पहले वो नदियां था, अभी वो सबसे भुवनेश्वर का सबसे बड़ा नाला हो गया, गंगुआ नाला करके। तो बच्चों को उसके बारे में पता चलता है कि कैसे हमने नदी को बिगाड़ दी है, तो डायरेक्टली एक्सपीरियंस होता है स्टोरी टेलिंग के लिए। मुझे बस बहुत एक्सपीरियंस, बहुत अच्छा लगा है वो शेयर करके बच्चों के साथ,
But sir,
कि
sorry,
मतलब
just a time check. अगर हम 2 मिनट में रैप अप करें
हाँ,
तो
मतलब वो हो गया, मतलब वो
ठीक।
हाँ ठीक है, ठीक हो गया वो,
No, sir,
मतलब
please come. I just wanted to give you time check. Continue.
सर
नहीं,
किस तरह से स्टोरी, जिस तरह आप शेयर कर रहे हैं, हमने भुवनेश्वर वाले टॉक में भी शेयर किया था कि स्टोरी से आप किस तरह से चीजें कर पाए, और लेसन प्लान जो दिए हुए हैं उसमें भी कई गतिविधियां हैं, तो आपने उनको भी शायद यूज किया था सेशन में, ये भी आपने शेयर किया था। जी जी हाँ।
बच्चों से मैंने पूछे थे कि आपके जहाँ बैठे हैं वही नदी है, दिखा सकते हैं? वैसे यहाँ नदी कैसे है? तो जो क्वेश्चन आया, तो दो जो जो लाइट जल रहा है वो आया कहाँ से? तो हाइड्रो इलेक्ट्रिक प्लांट से, वो अच्छे किताब में है, हुआ हाइड्रो इलेक्ट्रिक प्लांट से, कहीं वो जो थर्मल पावर आता है तो वह नदिया की जरूरी होता है, तो वो सारे कुछ चीजें जुड़ जाता है वो स्टोरी में, वो लेसन प्लान में भी दिया हुआ है, बहुत सारे एक्टिविटीज दिया हुआ है। और बाकी जो उसको भी, मतलब इंटरैक्टिव सेशन में, क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन में ही बच्चों को पूछा जा सकता है, जितने भी पार्ट्स है वहां पे वो स्टोरीज में। तो प्रथम बुक्स का जो स्टोरीज है वहां पे बहुत सारी कुछ मतलब चीजें हैं, रिसोर्स मटेरियल है, वहां से जोड़ सकते हैं, मतलब उसमें और कुछ चीजें भी जोड़ सकते हैं हम, जैसे सारे नदी के बिना कोई माइथोलॉजी संभव नहीं है, जैसे रामायण महाभारत बच्चों को पता होता है, लेकिन वो नदियां के नाम, नदियां कैसे क्या होते हैं, गंगा यमुना कितने पुराने होते हैं, यहाँ के उड़ीसा के सबसे पुरानी सिटीज जो कटक है, तो वो क्यों है नदी, उसके पास क्यों नदी है, भुवनेश्वर क्यों कैपिटल सिटी बना है, उसके पास कौन सी नदी है, आप कहाँ से कौन सी नदी से पानी पीते हैं, आपके ड्रेन कौन सी नदी में जाता है, तो बच्चे को ये पता होने से स्टोरी फॉर्म में लगता है, और बच्चों को पता चलता है कि एनवायरमेंटल के बारे में पता होता है, कि पोल्यूशन के बारे में, तो मतलब उनको फाइनल क्या, एजुकेशन का फाइनल जो अल्टीमेट रीजंस मुझे जो है, सबने सेंसिटाइज होनी चाहिए, मतलब हमारे धरती को रखनी चाहिए, मतलब सेंसिटाइजेशन अवेयरनेस होनी चाहिए। नॉलेज तो एक चीज है, लेकिन नॉलेज को मतलब काम में लानी चाहिए, तो बच्चों को सारे की चीज स्टोरी के माध्यम से दिया जा सकता है। जो स्टोरी में से तो मैं सारे स्टेम स्टोरीज लेता हूँ, मैथमेटिक्स ज्योमेट्री करके, लेकिन ये एनवायरमेंटल स्टोरीज भी बहुत अच्छे हैं जिसको क्लासरूम में भी डायरेक्टली इम्प्लीमेंट किया जा सकता है। बस इतना है।
थैंक यू सो मच संपत सर। थैंक यू, आपने जो बोला पहले ही टू कनेक्ट व्हाट चिल्ड्रन माइट नॉट हैव थॉट अबाउट टू द स्टोरी, वो बहुत अच्छा लगा। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर शेयरिंग योर इनसाइट्स। होपफुली वील हियर मोर फ्रॉम यू वेरी सून अगेन। थैंक यू। Now we have our last speaker, Seema Acharya ma'am from Kota, Rajasthan. Ma'am, आप अपना experiences share करना चाहोगे about how you
Yes.
use the STEM literacy program in your class?
Yes, ma'am. Hey, actually, this is a program for rural areas. With my experience, recently, Pratham Books StoryWeaver digital program मैंने before 2 or 3 months पहले ही ज्वाइन किया है और मैं बहुत ही इससे इम्प्रेस हुई। मुझे ये प्रोग्राम बहुत अच्छा लगा, इसलिए मैंने इसको अपने स्कूल में भी इम्प्लीमेंट किया है और मैंने देखा कि इसके रिजल्ट्स मैंने देखे हैं कि बच्चे बहुत जल्दी से और तेजी से सीख रहे हैं और जो जो सीख रहे हैं वो उनको बिल्कुल स्थायी मिल रहा है। मैंने देखा कि अगर बच्चे ज्यादा खुशी-खुशी सीखते हैं और बच्चे चाहते हैं कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा इसके माध्यम से सिखाया जाए। अगर जैसे मैं बताना चाहूंगी कि इसमें काफी टॉपिक्स हैं हर स्टैंडर्ड्स को लेकर के, कक्षा 1 से लेकर के 5 तक के मैंने टॉपिक्स देखे हैं ईवीएस के एंड मैथ्स के। तो अगर मैं बताना चाहूंगी कि का जो मैथ्स का जो घटाने वाला टॉपिक है कक्षा 1 के लिए जिन बच्चों को मैं शायद 6 महीने से नहीं सिखा पा रही थी कि इसमें से इस चीज को माइनस करना है तो इतना बचेगा, लेकिन जब मैंने स्टोरी टेलर के माध्यम से, स्टोरी वीवर के माध्यम से उनको कहानी के माध्यम से सिखाना चाहा, तो मैंने देखा कि वो जो एक इसमें स्टोरी दी हुई छुपन छुपाई के माध्यम से बच्चों ने बहुत इंटरेस्ट लिया कि एक बर्थडे सेलिब्रेशन हो रहा है, वो एक गुड़िया के यहाँ बर्थडे के लिए बच्चे आ रहे हैं, 10 बच्चे आए, उसमें से एक बच्चा जल्दी चला गया, तो बच्चों ने जल्दी से बचाया कि 9 बच्चे बचे हैं। एक बच्चे को उसने ढूंढ लिया है, तो तुरंत बच्चे ने बता दिया कि 8 बच्चे बचे हैं। इस तरह से उन्होंने जल्दी से सीख लिया कि घटाओं का प्रोसेस है और जब हमने उन्हें कॉपी में करने को दिया, तो वो फटाफट से कर पाए। और इसी चीज को अगले दिन मैंने देखा कि बच्चे खुद खेल में, जैसे सतोलिया का गेम है या कंचे का खेल है, तो वो कहानी बना करके उसको खेल रहे हैं। तो मुझे तो मेरा एक्सपीरियंस यही कहता है कि बच्चे इस स्टोरी टेलिंग के माध्यम से, स्टोरी वीवर से बहुत अच्छा सीख पा रहे हैं और रूरल एरियाज में तो ये बहुत ही फायदेमंद साबित हुआ है, जहाँ बच्चे पूरे टाइम स्कूल में रुकना पसंद नहीं करते या उन्हें अच्छा नहीं लगता, वो दिन भर लिखना और पढ़ना उससे परेशान हो जाते हैं। तो अगर उनको ऑडियो और विजुअल दोनों चीजों से दिखाते हैं तो बच्चे शौकिया तौर पे बहुत अच्छे से देखते हैं और खुशी-खुशी उस चीज को सीखते भी हैं। कहानी के माध्यम से सीखा तो उनका ज्ञान भी स्थायी हुआ है और इन बच्चों में इंटरेक्शन की जो भावना है वो भी मैंने देखी है कि ये बहुत मतलब रोल मॉडल साबित हुआ है कि बच्चे खुद उसमें इंटरेस्ट ले रहे हैं और इंटरेक्शन दे रहे हैं, टीचर के क्वेश्चंस का जवाब दे रहे हैं और खुद उस चीज को करके देख रहे हैं या पढ़ के देख रहे हैं। हर सब्जेक्ट्स के टॉपिक अच्छे से क्लियर किए हुए हैं, बच्चों का स्तर भी उससे बहुत अच्छा हो गया है, बच्चों सही जवाब दे पाते हैं, तो डेली जीवन की घटनाओं से, कहानियों से जोड़ रहे हैं। तो मुझे तो बहुत अच्छा लगा है ये प्रोग्राम और मैं सोचती हूँ कि और सब्जेक्ट्स में भी अगर अपन यूज करें तो ये बहुत अच्छा रहेगा।
Thank you, Seema ma'am. Thank you for sharing your experiences. बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you.
ओके मैम, ओके,
Right.
थैंक यू।
Thank you, everybody who was a part of today's webinar. We are really sorry about the extension of the time. We will keep that in mind next time. And thank you to all of the speakers. I would like to now invite colleague Yuvika Singh, Senior Partnerships Manager, to deliver the word of thanks. Yuvika, over to you.
So first of all, we'd like to thank all the audience members कि इतनी देर तक आप हमारे साथ बने हुए हैं. Really, thank you so much. And for the engaging, I loved reading each and every comment that was coming on the chat box here. तो उसके लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आप लोग सुन भी रहे थे and you were in the discussion. So तहे दिल से आप लोगों का शुक्रिया. And coming to our speakers, really very grateful कि एक बार हमने सबको बोला और एक बार में everyone got ready to come in and share their work, and their passion for working in STEM. नेहा ने जो वो स्किल और माइंडसेट वाली कॉन्वर्सेशन से शुरू किया, आई थिंक दैट टू अस इज लाइक where we want to go, कि कैसे आप mindset कैसे create करते हैं, and that is also what we are doing, just that each of us are working in different spaces. So or Sarit sir, you know, we'd love to have a one-on-one session with you, कितना कुछ है आपसे सीखने के लिए. Veena and Shayantan, thank you so much for sharing your process, your inspiration of creating these books. And you know, each and everything has been so insightful because we are here on the working end, but to know कि पीछे क्या चलता है. संपत सर और सीमा जी, अगेन बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आने के लिए, अग्रीइंग टू कम एंड शेयरिंग कि आपने किस तरह से किताबों को इस्तेमाल किया है बच्चों के साथ में, व्हाट हैव बीन योर एडिशंस, और किस तरह से जो ऑलरेडी दिए हुए रिसोर्सेस हैं उसको आप किस तरह इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर sharing those with us. तो मैं शॉर्ट ही रखती हूँ, एंड लाइक आई सेड, कोशिश करेंगे कि हम छोटे छोटे और मिनी इस तरह के सीरीज करते रहें. बहुत कुछ है प्लान में. लेट्स होप दैट वी डू मोर एंड मोर सच सेशंस. Thank you so much everyone again.
Thank you, everyone. And we will try and share the recording. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you,
ma'am.
for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Live development officer Vigir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
बीबी का 500 से 12 का लाभ है. सांगली पुलिस ऑफिसर का 8 का 16 का लाभ है. पूरा लैंग्वेज पढ़ने के एक लाभ है. लाइब्रेरी में इंग्लिश का 8 से 8 लाभ है.
I'm not sure. I'm just leaving an email ID where you can get in touch with us.